Ian Meredith. I'm the head bean at Ethical Addictions Coffee Roasters. We set up in 2006. Both Dave and I had a passion for like really good coffee. We knew what we liked, but we really cared about where it came from. So where's the provenance? Where's the origin? Which farm did it come from? Are they looking after the farmers? Are they looking after the environment? That really mattered. And so we set out to try and marry the two, like really good coffee, but with really good provenance, really good origin story. And then we started off initially just buying half a ton of coffee, packaging it and selling it. We weren't roasting at that time, but just like trying to work out if there was a business in this. And there seemed to be a lot of interest. And so very shortly we ended up with some friends in Switzerland learning about coffee. And then we ended up in Tanzania at the coffee farms. And very quickly, as we were on the farms and meeting the farmers, we realized that the poorest farmers and the ones that were most out of reach are the ones that needed the most help. But also the ones that were further out of reach and off the beaten track and higher up the mountains, like 6,000 feet on Kilimanjaro, they had the best coffee. They had the best coffee, but actually they were probably being taken advantage of the most because they had no route to market. So they had to sell to whoever showed up. And yet their coffee was worth far more than they were getting. They were maybe only selling it as cherry, so they were selling it as the cheapest form of coffee. It's just been picked, no sorting, no processing. And so we figured there was something we could do here. There's something we could do. So we started working with the Machari farm initially. That was our first introduction, our first contact out there. And then very shortly after that, we'd start working with the villages around there that were connected to that farm. Maybe they were workers on the farm, but back home they were also, maybe they had a small, almost like an allotment, a small plot of land. They were growing some corn, some bananas, and a bit of coffee themselves. And we realized that these higher villages had exceptional coffee, and so we started working with them, investing in their communities, and then that became not necessarily by design initially, but that became our model of like, if we could work with a family farm that cares about the workers, cares about environment, produces great coffee, then also partner with them, a little community where we could make a real difference. And again, same sort of principles and criteria, like quality, high grade coffee, well processed, well sorted, but also where we could invest and make a difference. And that's the model we then took. In 2010, we went to Brazil and established relationships there. More recently, we've been in Colombia establishing relationships with that model of like a small family farm that is committed to care for the environment, committed to care for their workers, but also, I don't know, super geeky, super nerdy. They care about their coffee and they want to make really, really good coffee. And then they want to also work with us on a partnership with a small community. When Dave and I were trying to set up the company, like everybody, you write a little business plan and you're trying to come up with a name and a brand and a logo and all the rest of it. And we had 3 names written on a piece of paper. I came down to an email from a guy called Phil Schluter based in Switzerland. And the email reads, "Hi Ian, we don't know each other, but my family's been in coffee for 6 generations. I was in Burundi last week. I met a friend and he told me what you're doing. If I can help in any way, let me know." Crazy, out of the blue. Signs it off and then says, "P.S. I've always thought Ethical Addictions would be a great name for a coffee company." So I looked down my piece of paper and one of the names on the piece of paper is Ethical Addictions. And so like goosebumps, your hair stands on end, and we're like, well, that's got to be the name. So yeah, I've been roasting for years now, and again, that's a huge learning curve, like just trying to get it right. We've now got 3 roasters here. We got a 60 kilo, we got a 5 kilo, and we got a baby 100-gram sample roaster, who's called Rory the Roaster. So, but yeah, getting that right is so much fun, and particularly with the sample roasting, it's like new crops coming every season, or even new origins that we might be trying to work with. Getting those coffees in and just roasting them 2, 3, 4 different ways to try and see where's the sweet spot that brings out the right flavor. And you can tell that it's the same coffee, but then it's a little bit darker and you've lost something, or it's too light and you haven't, it's maybe a bit too grassy, or you haven't got the right flavor profile. I would describe roasting as it's science meets art. It's like it's got to be both and. So you can learn the science and all of that, but if you just follow the science, generally in the cup something's still missing. We'd probably describe ourselves as more hybrid. Like we've got the computer and we've got the profiles and we'll map those profiles. But of course, the air temperature here in the roastery and humidity and stuff like that, and then making sure that we're tracking that. So we have a big thing like whoever's roasting, it's like do not disturb, leave them alone, let them keep their eye on it. And so it's much about tracking the profile that we've worked out over a number of months or years for that coffee, but then tweaking it as we go along on each single roast, keeping an eye on the profile on the screen, keeping an eye through the window and through the trowel and pulling it out, watching the color, watching how it responds. When did it crack compared to what we thought it was going to crack on the profile, and managing that, and then tweaking it when we need to. And then if something happens, particularly from like summer to winter, is the probably most drastic ones, you might have to use a completely different profile. And so for us, it's about then importing that and roasting that, making sure we just moved into our new roastery, making sure that it's roasted well, that we will sample roast it different ways to find the right profile, what brings out the right notes for that particular bean. Is it a lighter roast? Is it a sort of slightly darker roast? Whatever that brings out the right flavors, or maybe a blend to make sure that we got something for a good espresso or something like that. And then and then producing various different coffees as we can, and then returning back to the farms. So for us, it's from the farm to the cup and back again. So returning back to the farmers and to those farming communities, and using business as a tool for good. That's kind of a big thing for me. Like business can be such a tool for good if it's managed well and used well. Obviously, cupping's essential. We cup at origin, so we'll cup normally on the farm. It's more difficult with some of the village coffees and the smallholders because obviously they've got no facilities, but we'll often take the coffee from there maybe to the local farm where we can do, if they've got a cupping room or at least some facilities. So we'll cup at origin. So that we got that, and then obviously when the crop arrives, we'll cup. So obviously our process is slightly different, whether it's a new farm that we're trying to work with, or whether it's the farms that we return to year after year, because we know and we trust that the guys maybe at Machari, if we're buying AA and AB out of Tanzania, that we're going to get AA and AB again. We're not going to get ripped off. So there's a much more element of trust and relationship built up over the years, that we can rely on that quality. Cupping every week just to make sure that our roasts are super consistent and super reliable. And then when the new crops come in, crazy how fresh makes such a difference, and all the rest of it. So that's always a fun day. Everyone loves cupping, and there's always a bit of competition and a bit of interest in all the rest of it. Yeah. We get a lot of fun out of reinvesting in those communities, whether it's maybe something into their coffee business. So it's like maybe it's raised beds to dry the coffee, or maybe a pulper to a community that can then add value rather than just selling cherry. They can sort and process the coffee so that it has more value by the time they sell it, and putting more of the money back in their hands after the work that they've done. Or sometimes it's social investment. So sometimes we do things like water projects where we put water a few years back into a village for 128 families. I went out and dug the last 3 channels myself, which was really fun, and then switched the taps on, and we had this little ceremony. Or this year we did a toilet block for the local school. So the Aurora village, where the coffee workers are, the coffee guys that we buy from, their kids go to this local school called Omi, but they had no toilet blocks, so we were able to add toilet blocks to the school that added sanitary and hygiene, but also added dignity for the kids and things like that. And so that's a lot of fun, and we get a lot of reward out of that. But then obviously that develops that relationship that we go back year on year, and we can add value to that community whilst we get to receive great coffee off the back of it. Coffee's great. I mean, 2006 is a long time ago now in the coffee world. There wasn't as many roasters around, but it's always been an interesting industry, and it's changed so much. We've moved towards much more public appreciation of specialty coffee and the subtleties of tasting notes rather than just I think crudely, historically, the UK has been like light, medium, dark roast, and it's all about the roast rather than the profile of the individual coffee, and the tasting notes from an individual coffee and what that might be. I mean, even just customers that come in, they know about different varietals of plants that grow coffee, or they know about different processing methods from natural to honey to washed or whatever. 15 years ago, people didn't have a clue about that. They didn't know that. So the coffee industry's changed a lot, and we've had to change with it. We've had to move with that, and that's been fun for us because we love coffee and we love learning. Thankfully, we kind of have a mindset of these are challenges to overcome rather than burdens to weigh us down. So we tend to approach it like that. The way that we trade, because we trade direct with the farms and we're involved from farm to cup, all that whole process. The challenges then are around getting the crops right, because obviously we're buying a crop once a year from the harvest, so making sure we've got enough to get through for the following year. And obviously the harvests are at different times of the year, so where we're buying from and so on and so forth. And then and then building a team here and making sure we've got the right mix of skills and passion. It's really important to us that we always talk about relationship being our highest value. So relationship with farmers, relationship with customers, but we mean it as well internally, like relationship as a team, making sure we can employ the right people and get the right balance of skills and gifts and stuff that work together and complement each other. So now we've moved into our new roastery, and we've got the different roasters running and a lot more space, which allows us to have much more efficiency around production and help with that. But also what we've been able to do now is we've got roastery tours happening once a month, so the customers, public can come in, book on a roastery tour and just see a roast, Q&A with a roaster, taste different coffees, maybe do a small cupping session, or maybe learn to make a latte or something fun like that. And then we've got barista school starting, so again once a month people can book on and just learn how to do barista school. So yeah, we got loads more interactive. We got an open roastery anyway. People come in and buy coffee straight from us all the time, and come in and ask us about how should they make it at home and what does this one taste like and what would I like. So yeah, there's always someone on hand for the customer that wants to come in. Big shout out to like Phil Schluter at Kavoya. So he's been a big supporter of ours. He really encouraged us in the early days in the model that we were trying to do, and he's been a big help and support with much of our sort of import and that kind of process. And just a guy that just lives and breathes coffee.